My son is sleeping. It's early morning here, so that's
Excellent.
why I wanted to we start talking early, so that I think he's gonna sleep in. So I have time.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so today we have Dr. Kashi Azad, who is a chiropractor based in Australia, New South Wales. Is that correct? You're in Melbourne, yeah?
Sydney, yes.
Sydney. I'm sorry, Sydney.
No, no, Sydney.
Okay, sorry. I need to get
No
that right.
problem. Yeah,
Australia's a big place. He's
it's
based
all
in
very
Sydney.
beautiful, both of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Based in Sydney.
yeah.
He's also a Pahlavani teacher, which is, and please correct me, Kashi, if at any time I'm saying anything wrong, but Pahlavani is traditional Iranian arts for wrestling and training and general strength, things like that. Would that be correct?
It's a martial arts strength conditioning system. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, that's probably a better summary. A martial arts strengthening system. Excellent training system. Um, and so we came to meet each other, just for any of the viewers who are wondering, because the last, well, most of the interviews I've done is generally based around archery. So people might be wondering why we're bringing an Iranian guy here who's talking about Pahlavani, things like that. But um, you know, we were just talking about now the importance of being an archer is not just your technique in shooting, but preparing the body and conditioning and training the body for these particular skills and disciplines. And if we look at archery from a traditional sense, um, many of these martial arts were part and parcel of creating the all-round warrior. And I think that's something that today we probably lost in our modern age, and it's something that we do need to reclaim back if we can. And I think Ahmed Kara is actually the connector between us two. You're a member of the Maidan Archery Club, or you attend there sometimes?
Yes, I'm both a student and also the physical conditioning coach in a way.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so yeah, so that was, I think, the link of where we wanted to bring in this aspect of traditional training. Obviously, Olympic archers nowadays they have their own method of training, preparation, conditioning, but I was more interested in the traditional aspect. So without me going on
Yeah.
too much, Dr. Kashi, why don't you just briefly give us a quick introduction to yourself, a background, how you got into Pahlavani, and what you're doing right now in terms of that type of training.
Excellent. Sure. Yeah. Thank you for having me on, and it's really a nice opportunity to have this discussion with you and to share a little bit more about Pahlavani. But just to summarize myself, I suppose my journey started in Iran. I grew up in Sweden, and then migrated to Australia. About 12 years ago, I traveled back to Iran and went to the Zurkhane. Zurkhane literally means the house of strength, and that's where the Pahlavani ceremonies are held. The Pahlavani culture is maintained and mixed with the Zurkhane culture, and it's where they perform and practice this ancient ritual. Really, it is like a ritual worship of strength, and it's warrior conditioning. So it was it's has a very ancient history, and it's a very interesting one as well. But to kind of like fast forward, it was designed for developing, as you said, warriors that are, and you pointed on a very, very interesting topic that I'd like to explore a little bit about the benefits of specialization versus being a generalist. And that's, I think, something that, as you correctly point out, something that is getting lost in this age of further more specializations, that humans have to do to, I guess, in a way, survive. But to kind of answer your question, is that 12 years ago when I traveled to Iran, I went to the Zurkhane, and for me it was love at first sight. And since then, I've been practicing this art and doing my best to share the many benefits that I have experienced with people around me and my students, and through the work that I do as a chiropractor, because one of the many wonderful and beneficial aspects and qualities of practicing this ancient and beautiful art is that it brings a great balance and a great symmetry and a great harmony, not just physically, but also connecting with that warrior ethos and that warrior spirit, or as we call it, the Pahlavani, basically being like a Pahlavan, or that in the Islamic tradition they refer to as futuwwa, I think, if I'm not mispronouncing that,
futuwwa, right, right.
So there's there's a lot there, and how we start to get into this world. I guess it's we have to pick correct, I guess, the right door. We pick the right door to enter into this world, and I think archery is a very, very wonderful you know gateway to start exploring about this in a little bit more detail, and how this art can relate and be beneficial for archers in specifically is a very interesting question. I hope
Yeah,
that kind of give you an answer to about my background and how I came to encounter Pahlavani and what I try to do with it.
yeah, excellent. No, that was a very, very nice intro. Um, First question: what does Pahlavan linguistically mean? Is it's originally an Iranian word, right? And so, what does it mean?
Yes. Yes, this is a very good question, because this can lead us into, why it came to be and how it evolved. Pahlavan, the word Pahlavan itself is a label, it's like a title. Persian language is very descriptive, so Arabic, I guess, is similar in a way,
Mm.
that a word can have several different meanings
Right,
depending on the context that it's
context.
used.
Yeah.
So the word Pahlavan literally can mean a champion, it can mean a
Mm.
hero, it can mean a knight, like a paladin, like this type of I guess English type knights that they
Right,
refer to,
right.
the European knight or whatever that they refer to. So it can mean all those things, but essentially it's a label and it's a concept of all those philosophies or
Mm.
ways of being, or cultures, I suppose you could say as well.
Mm.
But when we attach the suffix "I" to it, so it becomes Pahlavani, then
Mm.
it has a greater context. It means that it's a way of becoming. It's like the way of the Pahlavan.
Right.
It's how to become a Pahlavan. So
Oh.
Pahlavani literally means the way of becoming a Pahlavan. So,
Mm.
and I already explained like what that Pahlavan means. It's like means how to become this champion, how to become this knight, how to become this
Right.
godly warrior in a way. And historically in Iran, there was these tribes
Mm.
that were referred to as the Pahlavas, and
Aha.
these Pahlavas tribes, these people, they're attested to in the very ancient Hindu texts. They're
Mm.
attested to in very ancient Persian texts, and this is predating Islam.
Mm.
And so there was this group, or there was this like tribe of people that their whole kind of and the very interesting history around them, whole kind of culture was based around warfare and battles, and they were kind of like I suppose the feudal armies or the feudal warlords
Mm.
in those regions that were very much involved in the very tumultuous and exciting and interesting history of that region, if that makes sense.
Mm. Mm.
So, to answer your question, that word Pahlavani, derives from this tribe of people. It designates becoming and how to be like these people, like this perfect warrior.
I see. So, like you mentioned before, it definitely, I guess, the Arabic equivalent is the idea of futuwwa, which is of being chivalrous and courageous and being a warrior type of thing. Yeah.
Exactly right, exactly right. And
Excellent.
my research is showing that this kind of concept of these ideas existed within the culture of these Pahlavas that I
Mm,
mentioned, that
mm,
this tribe of people, and they're kind of like they're like the archetype or the model of which later the even the European knight and the knights of the round table, etc., were formed based on,
I see. I
if
see.
we track this chronologically through time.
Well, that would make sense because the, I guess, not the dynasty, but the civilization of not just Iran is modern day, but Persia goes many, many years before Western civilization. So many of the influences come from either, Persian, it could be Far Eastern, or even Arabian type of influences, whether it be in physical training or academia or maths, etc., etc. We know for a fact that a lot of that influence came from the East and moved across to the West, right?
Of course, I mean, this is, as you said, like it has to do with the civilization, and the most ancient civilizations grew from that region. I mean, that's just no, natural that other civilizations that are younger will borrow, and like there's a exchange and transmission of knowledge and things like that. That's like completely natural. But what is very interesting to me is that this art form has survived, and
Mm.
throughout all these thousands of years and all these different major changes and major conflicts that have happened in the region. But this art form has survived and been passed down to us basically through an oral and physical culture and tradition from that time down to this day. And that's very special.
For sure, that's actually something I wanted to go on to. In Arabic, and I guess in the Islamic tradition, and I guess I'm sure in the Persian tradition, it's very important that whenever we're taking information or knowledge, that we have some type of reliable source, a teacher, and I think ideally it's better we get information from a live person rather than just from books. Obviously nowadays so much of the knowledge is lost through people are passing away, so we only have pictures or manuscripts or whatever. But traditionally we used to have sanad, what they call sanad in Arabic means connection, like a chain. And I'm sure no doubt they have that in the Persian context. In Well, let me ask you, in a Zurkhane context, is there
Yeah.
an idea of teacher student going back to maybe as far as maybe a hero in Persian culture, maybe someone in the Islamic context or something like that? And if so, what is your context like? You have a teacher and they have a teacher, etc., etc.
Yes, of course. Yes, yes. I've been lucky enough to travel around in Iran and visit many different Zurkhane. I've had very wonderful teachers and masters that I still like learn from. And there's a lineage. This is an art form that in our culture we say is passed down chest to chest.
MashaAllah.
It's heart to heart. So from a master to a student, this is how it's been passed down. It's actually, you know, I can claim to be the first or one of the first people to verbalize and commit this teaching to writing. It's in English. You know, in terms of physical instruction, not about the culture and the history, but more about like a methodical, systematic transmission of knowledge through the written word. This has not been the way of this culture. The way of this culture has been, as you mentioned, from master to apprentice in live experiential learning. and that's how it's taught in the Zurkhane. Today, if you go to Iran and you go to the Zurkhane, there's no one there instructing you and telling you even what to do. You have to see, observe, and immerse yourself in the culture, and learn through the adaptation of the movement to music and that sort of stuff. So there's very little written information about this. So having said that, what we know and what we can track this the Zurkhane culture in specifically is to this person named Puryai Vali, who lived around the late 1500s, and this is like the Gregorian calendar timeline, around 1500. So this is after the Mongol invasion of Iran, so it's like around that time, a little bit after. And we traditionally, in the sources that exist, we trace back the foundation of the Zurkhane tradition and customs to this person. And but the I guess the philosophical, the spiritual, the um, roots of the tradition and the physical culture dates back to some time that is very difficult to establish, through written sources and whatnot. But
Sure.
we have reasons to believe that it's predates, definitely the Islamic culture, predates even the Zoroastrian, which was the Iranian religion before Islam, and even it goes back to kind of a timeline that is even before that, where that whole region was more, I suppose, to put a label to it, more Mithraic, and I
Mm.
refer to that as the Mithraic age.
Mhm.
So the history of Iran as a kind of region. If we kind of put a chronological timeline to it, it would be a time where it's kind of in its prehistory, where it's very Mithraic, and then you get the emergence of the Persian empires, and there's Zoroastrians, and then you have the Islamic conquest and conversion, later conversion, which then puts the Iran in the Islamic timeline, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. No, I get that. Okay, so today Zurkhane only exist in Iran. Are there any Zurkhane that is outside of Iran, or is that something that is not kind of not
Oh
allowed,
yeah,
or
oh
there
yes.
is?
No, no, no. Yes, yes, 100%. Look, what happened was I was very lucky. It was kind of like a situation of being at the right time at the right place. In 2007, the International Zurkhane Sports Federation was founded, and I became a member of that federation. It's the
Mm.
only international federation with its headquarters in Iran, and its mission is to expand and spread the Zurkhane culture globally, and hopefully to have the Pahlavani sports and Zurkhane sports to be part of the Olympic Games, and that's their mission, and that's our mission, So there is a Zurkhane today in some of the countries around Iran, like Iraq, in Tajikistan, in Afghanistan. I think even they starting one in Lebanon. I'm not quite sure, but and then there are Zurkhane academies or teams or groups or associations around the world as well, and that's been growing very rapidly. And I'm very happy and glad to be part of that expansion. Through the works that I do, we have seen like the Pahlavani arts really get positive attention, and it's growing faster now than any time in its history, and that's really wonderful to be part of that.
100%. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to quickly share my screen to your Instagram page so people can maybe follow you and see your page, but also there are some images and maybe short videos of Zurkhane there.
So
While
you
while
pick the ones you want. I'm happy to explain them.
Okay, while I do that, maybe you can talk about, for people that don't know about Zurkhane, if they haven't seen it, the importance of music in the Zurkhane, and because I think this is a major factor, because when we see the videos of the guys training, it seems that there's always some type of music going on in the background. So maybe you can explain that to us.
Yeah, Jihad, just if I may, in that case, I would like to answer your question by, I guess, systematically going through the Pahlavani process. I suppose
Please.
the Pahlavani ritual, and what that does, it leads us into the music question that you answered very nicely.
Sure.
And I suppose what I can start by saying is that the Pahlavani is really seven arts. There's
Mm.
seven arts in Pahlavani, and these arts are done, as you can see, in a dance-like ritual, physical worship of strength. And
Mm.
I said to you before that the philosophical or like spiritual reasons to it is so that we can, become the uh, perfect warrior in a sense.
Mm.
But it's also a ritual ceremony. So it's
Mm.
done as a ceremonial, symbolical, I suppose, dance that mimics the stages of an ancient battle. And this is where it
Right.
gets very interesting because it's symbolically through you are doing an act, you're performing I suppose different stages of battle in a stages of acts in a dance that is like choreographed also almost.
Mm.
As you can see, these gentlemen, like, they're moving together and they're performing athletic, very athletic feats that
Mm.
them, and they make it look very simple and easy, but all of this symbolically represents stages of a battle, and I will go through these stages and that way also shed light on the seven arts of Pahlavani. The
Please.
first art of the Pahlavani is what you see now, and it's the art of the shields. We call them sang. And as
Mm.
you know how it relates to a combat or ancient battle situation, when they will draw up their lines of armies, they would assume shield formations first.
Mm.
And that is what the sang or the shield represents. It represents, obviously the shields of a warrior, but then it also represents the first stage of battle. That's
Mm.
another example of the sang or the shield that you can see there. Okay.
Mm.
Then we'll come to the second art of
Mm.
Pahlavi, or the second stage of battle,
Mm.
which is usually when the two armies clash and collide with each other. And
Mm.
this art is represented in our ritual there in that black and white photo. You can see the guys doing push-ups, and that's the
Ah.
art of the Shena.
Mm.
This is when in the Zurkhane everyone kind of like gets together and they start now doing the group exercise, everyone together. As you see, it's all done to the rhythm and the beat of the drum, the war
Mm.
drum, and then we start doing push-ups. This symbolically represents the stage of battle when you're pushing, you're being pushed, and you fall down on the floor, you got to get up, and you don't, what you don't see these guys doing is the different variations that we do. As
Mm.
when we do this type of movements, they're doing the very, very fundamentals, which is just doing normal push-ups, but it
Mm.
also there's includes a lot of stretching and
Mm.
mobility exercises in this
Mm.
art. But this kind of proceeds and is all done as a warm-up to the third stage of battle, or the third art of Palamoni, which is the art of the meel, or the clubs that you can see
Mm.
different photos of,
Yeah. Let
and
me get a video here.
the clubs, as you see in the video before, and that kind of like really stands out how we move them. Again, it symbolically represents the stage of battle when you're drawing the swords and you have
Right.
the clubs and maces or whatever
Right.
different handheld weapons, and you're fighting it out, right? So
Mm. Mm.
it kind of prepares you not just from a strength and stamina point of view, but also hand-eye coordination and balance. And as again we discussed already, and we're coming to talk about the importance of rhythm and that dance aspect of it in a way.
Mm.
So this brings us to the fourth stage of the battle. Usually after the battle, either you win or you lose, so you're running or you're being chased, and if you go further down, you can possibly find examples of what we do, and you saw that in the video before, how they do whirling around, they spin
Ah,
around themselves, and they do
yeah.
different foot exercises,
Mm,
that they do. So I'm just like, and this is, yeah, that you can see that it's
mm,
not only, it's not only being um, the rhythm that I talked about, but it's also, being light on your feet, having
yeah.
good balance,
The
being
guy, he
able
looks
to
like the guy looks like he's a ballerina. He's just twisting and jumping and very light.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's very, very important concept. Like in physical training, it's like your feet have to have bounce. Like you
Mm,
can't like just be stationary anyway. So it's very much like a cardiovascular type of conditioning. That
mm,
is the fourth stage of the battle. As I mentioned, it symbolically represents when you're chasing or you're being chased. So it's very
mm,
important. Anyway, we come to the fifth stage of the battle, which I think again, like these guys perform, and that's that
uh,
bow. In actual
ah,
fact, it represents the bow, and
yeah.
it's a metal bow that has a
Mm,
chain, and
mm,
we use that for overhead range of motion. We swing the metal bow or the steel bow overhead, and
mm,
that conditions us for overhead range of motion. And I guess this whirling that you can see now in the video, there's
mm,
the bow,
mm,
or cabote as we refer to it.
mm,
It conditions us for overhead range of motion, which is very important when you're laying siege to a castle or like an
mm,
enemy
mm.
fortress or something. And you've seen this in movies many times, when they're on top and they're throwing things over your head, and
Right.
then you gotta like have overhead range of motion. So symbolically, that's what that cabote or the bow represents.
Yeah.
And these are five arts that we talked about, which are in Iran. All these five arts that we already saw examples of and spoke about are is the warm up for wrestling, which
Mm,
is now the sixth art. That's the sixth art of Pahlavani,
uh,
is wrestling. So Pahlavani wrestling is very old. It's combat wrestling. They do it from horseback, and
uh,
they do it from ground. And it's the precursor to catch wrestling, where there is like all moves are allowed, and you can grab the feet, and you can do submissions and locks and
right. Right.
chokes and holds and so on and so forth,
Mm,
but they really clean that art up, and it's a now also a Olympic art, which is called freestyle wrestling. So
mm,
that's the kind of like the background to it. So from Pahlavani wrestling, and that was really the Persian way of wrestling, which is
mm,
very freestyle, and you can grab the legs, and that's, I suppose, a big differentiator between freestyle wrestling and Greco-Roman wrestling. You can
mm,
hear from the name where that comes from,
mm.
and where they cannot are not allowed to grab below the waist. So
Right.
that's
Right.
like a little bit of a difference between the two. So as I said, these six arts now, it's all very physical, and it's all very body based. So the
Mm,
seventh art and the last art of Pahlavani is the art of the drum and the bell, the art of the beating the war drum and
mm,
ringing the bell, which makes you what we refer to as a morshed, or the guide, who will be able to reside over a ceremony and conduct and hold ritual worship, like you have seen examples of. And that's that gentleman that sits on the pulpit
mm,
and beats the drum and rings the bell, while often reciting, from the Quran, reciting
mm.
from ancient books,
Pause. The murshid is the one who's beating the drum. Just continue from there again.
Yes. Yeah, sure. And that's the seventh art, as I mentioned, the drum and the bell. The morshed is the gentleman that you see sitting on the pulpit, and he beats the drum while the practitioners are exercising. And that is really the last art of Pahlavani, is to be able to not only master your own instrument, your own body, but also to master a external instrument like a drum, and to master music, and to master being able to recite the poetry that often is used in the Zurkhane. They recite from the Quran, they
Right.
recite mystical texts from ancient Persian poets, and
Right.
literature that has evolved around the Zurkhane culture over the last 100 years, whatever, hundreds of years or so. So I hope that gives you an insight into what these practices, how they're done. They're done systematically in the order that I explained, and what symbolically they represent, and the physical benefits that they have.
That was it's amazing. I mean, very, very interesting, and I appreciate the way that you broke it down to us in parts, in the 7 parts. A couple of questions from that. So the drummer, the murshid, according to that name, I mean, does that mean he is the most qualified and he has kind of mastered a lot of the other skills that come before, and that's the highest level?
In a way, yes, and that's exactly what I said. You have to master all the previous 6 arts, and master also the 7th art before you can guide others, before you can, lead the ceremony, and it's really a congregation. It's like a group of people. It's a temple. The Zurkhane is a temple, and they attend there to worship, and they're using their bodies to worship. It's a physical worship. It's a worship of strength, and it's a worship of masculinity, and futuwwa, and the Pahlavani, as we call it. And that's like the real idea and purpose behind it.
Yeah, this video we're looking at now is just is mind blowing, because to the ignorant person like myself, we think, oh, he's just moving a couple of large clubs around, but these are 62 kilograms each, or together they're 62?
No, it's together. We always measure them in pairs, because like obviously you're carrying the combined weight
Right,
of the two.
right.
So it's 31 kilos each,
31.
but that's nevertheless very, very impressive. I would say there is very few people in the world
Yeah.
that can do this. What you're seeing
Yeah.
right now.
No, it's amazing.
Not because of the not just because of the strength, but it's actually a very simple but not easy skill to learn. It's a simple, but it's not an easy skill. I've been teaching this now for many, many years, and I'm constantly like surprised, about by how people are surprised. I'm surprised by their surprise, because
Yeah.
they're always so surprised that it's so much more difficult than they thought, and they come and they pick it up, and they're like, they look uncoordinated, they feel uncoordinated, and they're like, okay, this was harder than I thought.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm always surprised by that, because of course it's going to be very difficult
Yeah.
at first. Everything is,
Sure.
it's
I mean,
because
it
you have
requires a number of things going on at once. You have to multitask, because you're doing this swinging rotational motion, which it's kind of behind the back, then in front, behind the back and in front, and it's kind of like a figure 8, in a way. And you've got to do it with both arms, and you've got to do it in sync at the same time. And I guess like with anything, technique is key. If you don't do this properly, you could easily injure yourself, right? Injure your shoulder or something like that if you don't do this correct.
Well, especially with that weight, of course you can. But I just have to point out that this is not beginner level. Like
Sure,
a
of course.
beginner would be a
Yeah.
tenth of that weight. A beginner starts with a 6-kilogram pair of clubs, so 3
Right.
kilograms each. So this is like 10 times what a beginner would use. just so that it's clear.
Yeah, yeah.
But how it's done, it's, as I said, very systematic. And you can't, like, as a beginner, you can't start with the heavier clubs, because obviously you're going to injure yourself, but also it's like you're not ready for it, so you can't do it.
Sure.
You just can't. You won't be able to pick it up. And in fact, you go to a video that I made recently, you will see that I was in a group where I was introducing this, and none of them could even like do it once.
Right,
But that's
right.
not to say that I'm special and I'm stronger. It's just because I practiced this longer and
Of
I know
course.
the skill and I have the understanding of how to do it. But that's what I'm saying. This is something that needs to build over time. So essentially, it's not just about strength, but it's equally about skill.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, like with anything. So we talked about the importance of music. Now you incorporate yoga into your Pahlavani training. Was that always part of it, or is that something you've introduced?
No, I have not added anything to it. The only thing I've added is just the business name that I created, and I called it Persian Yoga, just so that it can be
No worries, it just cut out.
issue.
So again, just to ask that question, the importance and the role of yoga. You said you haven't added anything; it's just the name. But tell us about the role of yoga in the
Yeah.
Zurkhane, and also, and please correct me if I'm wrong. As many people may or may not know, yoga is from the Indian civilization and this kind of context. Is that the same case with Pahlavani? Is it originally kind of from that part of the world and that civilization, or not?
No, no. I have to explain this, okay? So,
Please.
keeping in mind what I said about the practice, I have not added or subtracted anything about it. And keeping in mind what I said about my business name, I chose that as a marketing term, calling it Persian Yoga. We have to talk and decipher this word about yoga. Yoga is a Sanskrit word. It's a word that originates from the Sanskrit word yuj, which means union, to unify, to bring together, to yoke. That's what that word means. That's what that term means. Now, you have Hatha yoga, which is, as far as I know, the earliest form of yoga that around 250 BC was formalized by Patanjali in India, and that's its history. Then then I was like, and I have studied that, and I'm practicing Pahlavani now, and I'm practicing it and saying to myself, this is also yoga. This is also intended to bring unification of the mind, body, and spirit,
Sure.
and make you as a whole a stronger person, to make you stronger.
Right.
That's what this practice is. And it's the Persian expression. This is as far as I know, comes from that culture, comes from that way of thinking, that comes from that way of life. And it's the that's why I chose to call it Persian yoga, because it's the Persian expression of that manifestation of unification of mind, body, and spirit within an individual. I hope that makes sense to you, and I hope it gives you an understanding of how it is yoga, because it is very yoga. It is very yoga in the sense that it includes mobility, it includes flexibility, it includes meditation, it includes breathing exercises, and it's very, very oriented towards developing strength. Strength required by warriors in the battlefield arena, the arena where it's your conditioning, your physical and spiritual and your mental conditioning decide if you live and die.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and that clears that up. We're looking at a video here of it's kind of like a modified press up. Just talk me through what's going on here and what are the benefits, and at what stage does this come in your 7 steps of Pahlavani?
Yeah, sure. So this is part of the art of Shena. This is actually the third fundamental of the practice with the Shena. The Shena, or the wooden board that you see them gentlemen doing push-ups on, it has specific reasons why we use it. It symbolizes the sword. It's like where we do our push-ups, as you see, they touch the chest on it all the time.
Right.
And it's meant to give you a stable, symmetrical platform that is raised above floor, that enables you a greater range of motion and leverage while you're doing bodyweight exercises, such as this, what we refer to as twist push-ups. So they're doing twist push-ups in this scene that you see here. And as I said, it's the third fundamental exercise of the Shena, and it's done in that sequence that I've already explained. So this would be the second stage of that ceremony.
Okay. I want to talk about the bow, the metal bow that they use. I understand how that exercise helps upward mobility and shoulder movement, etc. Why would they not use an actual bow? Because Persians were also well known for archery and shooting. Did they ever think to actually use an actual bow just for practice for pulling, or did that ever come around or not?
Okay. I have to explain that, yes, you're right about the link of archery and Persians. In fact, I've read that in the very early history, the Persians only taught their children 4 things, and that was to shoot a bow, to ride the horse, to wrestle, and to tell the truth. This is their whole entire education at in ancient time. But to answer your questions, I have to say that, as I mentioned in the beginning, this is a physical martial arts, physical strength conditioning system. So it's not martial arts like we know it.
So you said
Okay,
it's yeah. Just go back about 20 seconds. Yeah.
Okay, I'll try my best. But I think the last thing I was saying in regards to the kapode is how it's used, is that it's the it's used in a Persian yoga or Pahlavani is a martial arts strength conditioning system. Okay, so if we understand that, it's the exercises are done to strengthen you so that you can apply yourself to the skill specific practices that you do. It may be archery or other weapons that you apply, or specific combat. Like I have other, we put that into modern context. There's lots of Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys that do this. There's a lots of wrestling guys already, that do this. I have archers that do this. I have fencers and other. My point is that often with martial arts practice, it can be kung fu or whatever.
Diversified, yeah.
You have to apply yourself to the technique, yeah.
Right.
But you cannot neglect the strength conditioning. Sometimes some martial arts, like specifically if we talk about archery, it makes you stronger, but it's unilateral. Like it's very one-sided. It's very rare that you shoot from both sides, and it's very rare that. Exactly, that's my point. So it becomes very linear, and that's not being the strongest that you can be. The strongest that you can be is circular, it's spherical, it's not linear. You have to be 360 degrees strong, and there are no more degrees than that. So this why I said to you, this is a martial arts strength conditioning system to develop the strength required for martial arts. Now you can go and be as specialized as you want, because now you have general strength for everything.
So, for example, if I, one of a traditional skill, I guess, is, for example, throwing a spear or javelin. So, this type of exercise is strengthening, my shoulders and coordination, so that I'm able to throw a spear, for example, right? I could do that.
or anything else, because
Yeah.
as I said, like in a live battle situation that this is preparing you for,
Mm.
anything goes, and
Right.
like your life depends on how ready you are. You can't just be a good archer, you can't just be a good javelin thrower, you can't just be strong, you can't just be fast. You have to be everything, you have to be a honed sharp
Mm,
weapon,
mm, mm. And I think nowadays many of us are good at one thing, maybe two things, but we it's very rare to find someone who is good at a lot of different disciplines. For example, someone might be good, like you say, just at archery, but what happens if their bow breaks and they have to have hand-to-hand combat with someone? They have to now know how to wrestle, how to engage that person. What if they're able to then
exactly,
pick up a
exactly.
sword? What if they're able to pick up a stick or a spear or a lance or anything like that? They need to be multifaceted, and I think
Exactly.
nowadays, like we said, we're too one-dimensional, and the traditional warrior, um, however he looked, was able to pick up basically any weapon, and he could use that to his advantage.
Yeah, I mean, there are many examples such as that, and it's all very fascinating to see what the human body and human potential and human capability, if you apply yourself. But here's the very interesting thing, that doesn't matter how much talent you have, if you do not
Mm,
have a system, a practice, and an approach, you will not reach that optimum potential and peak performance that you would otherwise be able to reach.
right.
So my message here is that this is a very ancient, time tested,
Mm,
battlefield proven system that works and has produced results. Because I mean, doesn't matter about the socioeconomics and politics of today or history, doesn't matter at all. But what matters is that you know what's there. This comes from an ancient culture that, not just once but several times in history, was, if not the one of the largest empires with the greatest armies and
mm,
whatever that existed on
mm,
the history
mm,
of the earth. And
for
that
sure.
and this system, originating from that time, exists till this day. The
Mm,
empires are gone, the
mm.
cultures have changed, but this has stood the test of time and is with us to this day. That's very, very special.
For sure. I think that's one thing that I admire about that particular culture, is that they have maintained a tradition of how the Zurkhane was. Even if you were to walk into Zurkhane 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, it should be the same as it would be today. And this is very important in maintaining and preserving culture and knowledge. I like the video we're seeing now. The difference between the linear movement of a dumbbell, whereas you have the rotational 360-degree movement of the meel. Yeah.
Exactly right, exactly right. And this is a uh, kind of like a sophisticated. It's very sophisticated because it's so simple. That's what makes it
Mm,
so sophisticated. For example, I work, as I said, like with a lot of archers, with a lot of athletes in general, and one of the common conditions that I see as a chiropractor is shoulder issues and shoulder pain,
mm,
from some different, like whatever it may be, strain or sprain or whatever it is.
mm,
But after the initial treatment, you want to start the patient on a rehabilitation protocol. And this is something that's very interesting, that when I do a comparison, with linear training, using TheraBands, using dumbbells or whatever, to really conditions the shoulder holistically and completely, you need at least 3 4 different exercises.
right. Right.
Whereas with the meal, it's just one exercise that encompasses and integrates all those ranges of, I mean, it's a full range of motion of the shoulders in circumductions with resistance. That's unique.
Yeah.
You know, so that's sometimes for a Westerner, that's like a little bit difficult for them to get their head around, because they're used to the complexity. And I have to say that in the fitness industry, they thrive on really complicating the situation so that you feel overwhelmed and confused, that you need expert advice and help. I mean, that's how they sell business and services, right? So they're often very surprised and confused about how simple it really is. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, definitely. If someone wanted to, get into this uh, buy one of these meals, I mean, it's not something you can just buy in a sports shop or something like that. Do you have to get it from specific people who make them, or where do you recommend someone to buy them from?
Yeah, okay. Thanks for that question, because yes, it's obviously equipment intensive art. Like, you need the equipment and they're very unique, so it's not something that you can just get. I have made some resources available on my website, persianyoga.com, where you can go and learn how to make this stuff yourself. I mean, there's always people that like to do those type of projects. I have also made them available for sale through my website, and I'm the only international supplier, the provider that sells authentic and original equipment made the way it has been made for hundreds of years, and it's traditional, handmade by the artisans that originated this culture. It's the real deal. And my people that make this is fourth generation family business, and we're supporting a community, and we're supporting the original arts by doing that and keeping it authentic. You know, it's not just something that today I see, like, there's people in the UK, there's people in different parts of the world, and all of a sudden they are producing Persian meal. And I read something very interesting. One person commented, is they say, how can you make like a Persian meal in the UK? You know what I'm saying? It's like you making Persian carpets in the UK. It doesn't even
Right.
make sense, like, you
Yeah.
know. But
Yeah.
anyway, this type of people that they copy and they trying to like replicate it in that way, they're thinking it's not straight, you know, because they're being disingenuous by calling it something it's not. Anyway, but that's I guess my point of view. But what I'm trying to say is that I am really trying to preserve an authentic and original culture and way of life, you know, which thankfully and very, very happy about that it's currently thriving, and it's growing, you know, and hopefully we won't lose it to you know, commercial and capitalist interest, where everything is copy and paste, and everything is made in China, and everything is like used as a commodity, and it loses its artistic, it loses its spiritual, it loses its intrinsic value as something sacred, and it just becomes another thing that you throw in the garage. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right. Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely not something that you want to buy and then, let the dust settle on it. I mean, they look like works of art as well, and it's very important. Very similar
It's a
to,
functional work of art, you know.
yeah,
This for us, the meal represents what the samurai swords represents to the Japanese culture.
right,
But the
right.
thing is, you cannot pick up a samurai sword. I mean, and swing it around in the living room, and it's fun for 5 minutes. But this one is like it's like something that's with you for generations. You pass on to your children, and it makes you strong, and it makes your children strong. You
Right,
know,
absolutely. Yeah, I
it's
was gonna,
functional piece of art. Mine is in the living room.
yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna say, in the archery context, it's just like someone wants to buy a cheap bow from China. Okay, you can buy it, but it's going to break very quickly, and you're not going to get the full, I guess, craftsmanship quality from it. Whereas if you spend a bit more, it's worth to buy a good bow that's going to last you a long time and maybe even outlast you and become, like it says here, like an heirloom, which is very important.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that feeling. Yeah. I mean, you have to have respect for yourself, and you have to have respect for the things that you touch. Like it's the feeling you pick up. Like, I mean, you know this. You pick up like a nice handmade bow, and you have like a cheap bow in, that you have. It's a complete different feeling.
Mm, for sure, for sure. So, for example, a beginner pair of meals, 6 kilogram, 8 kilogram. We can order this from your site. You can ship worldwide.
Yes, I do. Yes, I do that. And yeah, and if and anyone who's interested signs up on my newsletter at this stage until the end of January. I'm running a very generous campaign to celebrate the solstice that we just passed and the new stage that we entered. Yeah, if anyone's interested, they can also reach me to ask questions. But yes, persianyoga.com, I ship worldwide, and there is all the equipment, and also I've made resources available for those who want to learn this on their own. There's manuals and instructional videos, and of course I also am available to do coaching, whether it be online or in person. My passion and my purpose is to share this art and its benefits with as many people as I can, and that's what I want to do.
Yeah, sure. I'll definitely put the website link in the description of the YouTube video when we post that. Dr. Kashi, tell us about a typical day in your life in terms of training. How much training are you able to get in on an average day, and how much can you do on a good day? And what type of training does that involve?
Okay, thanks for asking that questions, because again, there's I get that question quite a lot by my students, and I think it's very something very important to talk about.
Mm,
This I'll talk about my own training first. I practice every other day, so every
mhm,
second day. Very sometimes when I'm practicing very, I feel like doing that, and I feel stronger. I maybe do one extra session, so 2 days in a row. But then I definitely take the third day off. My point is, rest is very important. And secondly, I only practice Pahlavani. I don't do anything else,
mm,
and it meets my needs. And one of the things that I absolutely love about this is that it's so effective and it's so efficient. So in a very, it's very, very, it's you performing like a dance. As I mentioned, you're dancing, you're going through these stages, you're performing this ceremony for yourself, and it doesn't
mm,
take longer than 40 minutes to like less than an hour. And
mm,
that's wonderful, because in this stage of my life, I'm very busy, and I'm sure you can relate as a family man, as a businessman. Time. I mean, I don't have time to go to the gym anymore, and
right.
it, it
Well, the gyms are
getting
closed
there and
now.
getting back is the time I can't invest. That too, yeah, yeah, of course, that too, for sure. Some people need that environment. I don't need it. I have self-discipline. I do my own thing. I love doing that.
Mm,
So for me, is every second day, 30 minutes to 1 hour maximum, and I go through this systematic sequence that I already mentioned to you, and I practice within the Pahlavani system. I trust the system. It works for me. And
mm,
on the side, like maybe I'll do some boxing, or I've started also on archery lately more seriously. So
mm, mm,
then I can dedicate myself to doing that fun stuff. But
mm,
Pahalavani just keeps me strong and fit and ready for most things. And I get up, I wake up, I do it, and then I get on with my day. I
mm.
find that's the best recipe that works for me.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, no, I think I'm, as well as the archery, I've been doing jujitsu for maybe I don't know how many years now, 6 or 7 years. So that's definitely also a
Yeah.
big part of my life. I mean, if archery was to disappear from my life, I would be sad, but I would still have the jujitsu, which I really get a lot out of in terms of the movement, the flexibility, the strength, the conditioning. And I can see the Pahlavani training and the Zurkhane training definitely links in with that. And you mentioned that you have some jiu-jitsu practitioners who come to you for learning and for training. For myself, I think I really want to incorporate some of these warm-ups, these exercises, these drills in my jiu-jitsu, and just like you say, just general overall fitness and conditioning. I think it's, there's so much to these traditional disciplines and skills that, we cannot afford to ignore, the teachers of the past. It's very important that, they've kind of sacrificed their whole life to these arts. And we think we can just pick up a dumbbell or a barbell and do a couple of chest presses or something like that, and that gets us fit. That's not the way it was traditionally.
Yeah, look, you said some very interesting things there, and yeah, I agree with you by and large. One of the major things in regards to a misunderstanding when it comes to strength training and physical conditioning, it's very much going away, but it's still there in the mm, in the general public, possibly I could say, is that they equate strength training and conditioning with bodybuilding. That's what they're equating it,
Mm,
and it's in my point of view, it's completely misleading and wrong in a way, because bodybuilding is bodybuilding.
right.
Strength building is a different approach, and it's for different purpose as well.
Mm,
So
mm,
this what I'm trying to is a strength conditioning system.
mm.
It's not bodybuilding, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, because I mean, we
As
can
I
see
said,
from your body type, you're not bulking up, you're not putting on a lot of mass, and in a way, that's not always a good thing because it can slow you down, right? If you have too much mass, but you have a very lean physique, but you're flexible and it's a functional physique.
I think the key word is functional. Yes, I agree with you. And I always say to people, you need to be as big as you need to be. You know,
Mm,
you don't need to be bigger than that. You know what I'm saying? As you said, it will be more of a hindrance than it's good. But anyway, it's not to say that being big is bad or being
mm,
small and fast is better or worse. There are different body types. But my point is there is different ways of conditioning those body types. But interestingly, if you go through the full range of motion and capabilities of your bodies, focusing on the major joints such as the hip and the shoulder and the knees, and you work strength around that from the core out, that's it's very simple. It doesn't need to be more complicated than that.
mm,
And
mm,
this art does it, and it's been doing that very well for thousands of years. And you mentioned the link to martial arts. I mentioned the link to martial arts. I have to
mm,
also say that since 2012, when the Pahlavani Rasul Khadem, he's a former world champion, Olympic medalist
mm,
in freestyle wrestling, and he became the wrestling coach of the Iranian national team. And if you browse through my thing, you will see the Iranian national team in the Zurkhane, the wrestling team, both the freestyle and the Greco-Roman guys doing this practice. And this is their physical conditioning art, right?
mm,
And the rest
mm,
of the time they're practicing like sport specific wrestling skills.
mm,
So
mm,
and since 2012, Iran has won every single world championship in wrestling. I think, unless except for the last one, I think, but 6-7 years in a row they won it. And in 2012